and mindfulness and just all around wellness, definitely, to probably prevent things from happening. And I think cancer it's a huge problem, like, and why is it happening more and more often? And it's not only the food, like, it is the mindfulness as well. And like
stress is being implicated in so many diseases now.
So like stress and food, but the food we're eating is also causing stress. So it's sort of like this really vicious cycle that we need to figure out how to...
And we use food as a coping mechanism from stress, so exactly. It's all feeding into everything.
It's awful.
It is awful. And I found that looking back at fake self-forgiveness that I had when I was younger, if I had a bad day or a stressful day, I'd stop by McDonald's and get a big bag of food. And you should have seen the monstrous orders that I used to get. It's justification. It's just right. Yeah. And, you know, it's something that I need to take a deep breath before I can process my emotions on that now. Because, of course, the first place I go is, how could you do that? How could you do that to yourself? Clearly that's not good. And then you look back at the equipment. And I like to use the word equipment because we all are going into situations and decisions in our lives with the tools that we have available. Mm-hmm. And I have to be a bit more gentle on myself for things that I did when I had less equipment to work with. Clearly, I'm not going to be operating on the level of someone who has this extra knowledge. I'm very privileged that, you know, I was going into these situations of my life having been through recovery groups and a lot of fantastic outpatient treatment programs that really did give me a lot of fantastic ways to cope with things. They went unused a lot, I will say. They were great to learn about. But only now am I putting my own spin on things.
Yeah, and I think from what you're saying, it's reminding me of, like, the inner child that is within us. So when we grow up, our parents, like, they're doing the best they can. Like, we can't blame everything on the parents, but we don't have the tools that we need, as I probably said before. So now that we are older, our adult self can be the parent that the child self never had. So we can go back and, like, if we're in a moment and we really want to do something that might be self-destructive, we can close our eyes and imagine doing that to the child version of ourselves. And that might shift our perspective of, like, would you feed this child a bunch of beer or whatever it is that you might do as a coping mechanism. So I think, like, going in there and connecting to the child within, because I feel like that child self is always there a little bit.
I would hope.
Yeah. I think it's, like, an important way to forgive the child self that didn't know any better, because maybe the child didn't have parents that knew how to deal with certain emotions that they were going through.
And we're all human. We all go through situations where we could have made a better choice.
Yeah.
Going back, though, to what you were saying about that child within, reminds me of a conversation that I had with my mother over the summer. We were going for a walk, and I told her we were walking through the Virginia Rivers Concourse, and I pointed out the swings. I said, you know what? Not too often, but every once in a while I'll come here and I'll just go on the swings. And I gotta say, lately I have been very appreciative of the inner child within me. And I don't think that I can be successful if I lose touch with her. And my mother, you know, was a bit curious about this statement. And I said, I feel like it's synonymous with optimism. I feel like when the inner child dies, the optimism dies. Because you look at the mindset of a lot of children, and they do tend to see the sunny side of things, and they have a lot of hope for...
They're full of energy,
yes,
full of hope, and they're just excited about life and excited of what's to come. And then when something bad happens, they don't do it because they know that it's bad. It's like we learn if something is bad or good.
And then what's next? You know, that's the thought is, okay, what's next?
They're like in a flow state. They're constantly in a flow state.
Right. And I'm going to get into a really great topic in a moment about childhood, because I think that we have a lot of, you know, all of us have so much baggage related to our childhood.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to come up in some very dramatic, you know, film-esque, traumatic, you know, childhood to, you know, bring a lot of baggage with you. But before I do that, I'm going to take our second and final break of the hour, so stay tuned. Annii Gets Healthy. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Annii Gets Healthy. I'm here with Josy Arsenault, and today we're talking about a lot of things, primarily self-forgiveness, a bit about yoga, a bit about veganism, mainly just about taking care of ourselves. I was talking right before the break about childhood and how we have so many issues from our childhood that we do have to forgive ourselves for, but we need to put things into perspective before we can see how we're going to do that forgiveness. We have to see where the blame, and I don't like to use that word, but I will for a moment, we have to see where the blame lies. Because I feel like one of the biggest barriers to self-forgiveness is the assumption that everything problematic that has happened in our lives is solely our own fault and is solely the responsibility of, ill choices that we've made. Mm-hmm. So I have been doing some research lately just for a paper that I have to write, and a lot of the research that I have been looking into lately deals with overweight children and deals with exclusion. And what a way to demonstrate to us at a very early age that there's something wrong and that we are not good enough. And I think a lot of it is just the way that we're conditioned to be. I don't think that children are born with a desire to be exclusionary. I don't think that we are born to be victims or oppressors. I don't think that that's the case, but of course it happens. Just to get really personal for a minute, when you were growing up, and I mean this is almost universal, I would be surprised if you said no, but I'm sure, did you have these circumstances growing up where you definitely felt at odds with your peers and you felt excluded?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I was thinking about this yesterday, but growing up, I always felt like I couldn't connect with people as much as I would have liked, and getting older, it's like getting more and more apparent, just even in our society, I feel like everybody's so afraid of connecting and afraid of talking to each other. And even though I'm aware of that, it's like I still have those issues. So it's and I'm going through a phase right now where I'm trying to figure that out. But yeah, I've definitely been noticing that since childhood.
Was there any specific activity where you felt that you just couldn't really join in with other people? Like school primarily, just in that realm? Yeah,
actually gym class. I always felt inferior than other people. I had asthma growing up, so I hated running, and I just didn't like sports. And now I figured out that there's a physical activity for everyone, so I still don't really love sports, but I love yoga and walking and that kind of stuff.
We come from unique backgrounds, so to think that we are all supposed to walk the same path and come from the same place and perform each step in the same way is absolutely unrealistic. I mean, I'm sure that when you're teaching yoga or you've done yoga with friends, nobody starts out on the same skill level.
Absolutely
nobody
not.
Starts out on the same range of motion.
How many people tell me, oh, I can't do yoga, I can't touch my toes? It's the whole point is for us to start somewhere, not knowing how to do it, and then going through things to learn how to do things properly. Me having gone through my back being out made me realize that there was something that I could improve on. So instead of quitting yoga because it destroyed my back, I was oh, I'm just learning how to do the thing better and better and better.
You had to forgive yourself for that error in order to move forward.
Exactly.
If you have somebody who is beginning anything, who is going into it with going, well, I'm really bad at this, so it's not going to work. Maybe I can get better and feel better about myself. It's just, that's really not the way to approach that, because we really need to look at our potential ability level before we do anything, instead of looking at where we are right now. Because when we look at where we are right now, there's always this assumption that this is where I'm going to remain.
Mm-hmm. And I have another really good example. I have a slack line that I bought a couple summers ago, and I like to go to the park and just lay it out. And when you start slacklining, you can't do it. Your legs are wobbly, you fall a million times, and I still fall a million times, but now I can walk across. But that took me so long to get to do it. And then people come up to me and they're really intrigued. I'm like, oh, hey, you want to try? And they look at me oh, no, I can't do that. I'm like, of course you can't do it. It's your first time. So you just got to get up there and try and fall and then do it again and fall and do it again. And just you keep doing it until eventually you can do it. And then even when you can do it, you might fall one day, but all you got to do is just get right back up.
The fear of failure is by far one of the greatest things that hold us back. Even in my coming back to university, I looked at my performance back when I first started university an unspecified number of years ago. And I thought, well, God, I look at those marks back then, and this is clearly, this is clearly not for me. I used to always say university just isn't for me. College is where I had to go because university isn't for me. I mean, if I were to continue that mindset, I'm really glad that I challenged it, because university has been a fantastic experience for me this time. And, I really, it has certainly not been a repeat of my past. And I had to make all of these stops along the way. I think, and this is a really great place to start wrapping things up, is that I am grateful every day for the terrible things that have happened and that I have been complicit in my life. I used to get mad that I allowed myself to become this big, this overweight, this sedentary, this dependent on external sources of happiness. But now I see them as facilitators of my current happiness that may not be there every day, but when it's there, it's beautiful. I once said, when I was going through a very difficult period of depression, that if I was always happy, I would never enjoy happiness the way that I do when I have it. It's fleeting. And the fact that I get it sometimes is such a gift.
And something I was thinking about is, like, what if your life was perfect? Then what?
Then what?
Then what? Like, there's nothing to challenge you. There's nothing
Where do
to
you
work
go?
on. Where do you go from there? Okay, my life is perfect. I'm doing everything perfectly. I'm the perfect human being. Then what?
Then what? And we often look at other people and we, whether we're aware of it or not, we aspire so much to be that person that we never ask ourselves if we really want to be that person. How many times do people look at not just a celebrity, but just someone that can do something on a level that we cannot, and we think, God, I want to do that. But do you?
Yeah, there's always going to be, like,
there's pros and cons to everything.
Yeah, everything. Like, there's good and bad. There's night and day. There's, like, polar opposites to everything.
I think that the moment that we are able to forgive ourselves, challenge our frame of mind at the time and currently, once we come to that place of true acceptance, that is where our past is no longer a source of shame and negativity, but it becomes a new tool for us to move forward.
Yes.
And I think that's just a really great place to end this episode. Josy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So I say to all of my lovely listeners, if you want to reach out, if you have any questions or concerns, if you want to challenge me, if you want to give me a new idea for the show, or if you just want to share a new exercise or recipe with me, I am all ears. As I said at the beginning of the episode, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Annii Gets Healthy. That's ANNII Gets Healthy. Annii K Health on Twitter, and anniegetshealthy@gmail.com. If you're currently listening on CHMR and you didn't get to listen to the whole episode, look the show up online. You can find it on Spotify, on Google Play, and also on Apple Podcasts. Some of the episodes are up on CastBox as well. So there's many ways you can listen to the show, so please tune in, subscribe, download, whatever works for you. I want to thank everybody for listening, whether there's one of you or 100 of you out there, whether this has inspired you to do something different in your life or not. By listening to the show, you have provided me some company and some purpose, and I appreciate it very much. I look forward, as always, to talking to you again next week. Please love and forgive yourselves. I know that you're doing the best you can with what you have to work with. Please take it easy, and I love you, and I will talk to you guys next week.